Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another little tutorial I made for FMOD within Unity. I just wanted to run you through the Unity side of things. So I have a pre-made little Viking village here, which is a famous example for putting audio within Unity using FMOD. So the tutorial that I'm watching at the moment and learning from, which I also learned from a little while ago, but it's good to have a refresher, works off this little environment. And you can download it for free in the asset store, which in Unity is right here. Might take a bit to load. So you can just look through the store, type in Viking Village, make sure you find the one that's Unity and it's free, and you can download it and play around with it yourself. If you've never used Unity before, this is probably very, very confusing, as it is for everyone the first time you open up Unity. But let me run you through what you need to know as an audio engineer. So on the left-hand side, and this is the latest version of Unity as well, so it might be different in older versions, but it all generally looks the same, just in different areas. On your left-hand side, you have all your content or your objects. So for example, you have all your buildings, boats, gates, towers, wall panels, and when you click on something, it'll highlight it and you can see where it is in the world. This is what we're going to be attaching audio to generally, are the objects. But before you start messing around with audio, what you need to do is you need to find the player camera. It's going to be different for every game, and obviously if you're working with a game student or just someone else who's making video games, you kind of want to ask them, where is the player? How are they in the game? Within this tutorial, it's within camera high, not camera loop high quality, which I found out. And what you want to do is in the inspector, when you click on an object, it'll give you all the details of it. So where its position is, what it is, what it does. So if you scroll down, you can see that it's got an audio listener. This is just the basic Unity audio listener. So we can just ignore that for now. You can turn it off if you want, but it doesn't really change much. What you want to do is scroll right down to the bottom and you'll see where I've added a studio listener script. And I'll show you how to do this. So I'll remove this, remove the component, and you want to add a component. If you've installed and integrated FMOD properly, you should see an FMOD Studio option within the components. If you click on that, there'll be a few different options, but you want to click on the Studio Listener. This is basically the program within FMOD that's listening to your FMOD sounds. And leave the index the same at 0. So without this, there won't be the 3D aspect of your FMOD assets. So you won't be able to actually hear them. So you need to attach this to the main camera, so as the player moves around, it's listening for all those FMOD sounds. And you can actually see where you spawn in as well. So this is what the viewer sees, and what the player sees, and where you start. The only audio that I've added to this so far, I'll show you my FMOD session for this project. Obviously, I've named it Viking FMOD, so it makes sense, and I've put it in the same folder as the project. So if I go to my desktop, then I go to my Viking Village test, you can see that I've got all my assets and my Unity session, but I've also got my FMOD session in the same folder, which is really important. So everything is all in one place, so you can drag your projects around and not lose anything. So this is my session. I've just got 3 basic sounds that I had in my NOS VR2 world, but they're a pretty good example of very simple implementation within FMOD. I've got a 2D sound, which is a wind loop, which I use within the castle. So it doesn't really make sense within the Viking village, but hey, it kind of fits. And so this is just a simple loop that's start to finish. I just added a fade end to end, which I should have done at the start. And I've just turned it down because it was a little bit loud. So you can see that's a 2D sound because when I click on the master, there's no attenuation panel at the bottom. Whereas if I look at my Torchfire, which I've added into the game, it has a spatializer because it's a 3D sound. So you can see how far or how big the sound is with the minimum maximum distance, the sound size over here, and the attenuation. So as the player gets further away, the sound gets quieter, being a 3D sound. And that's obviously on a loop as well, because it doesn't make sense for a torch to end. And for I got some werewolf howls that I had in Nosferatu. I just got them on a very simple scatter instrument, which is looped as well. Otherwise, the scatter instrument will get to the end and stop. So that's looping and constantly going through different werewolf howls, which is pretty loud at the moment, just so you could actually hear it within the Unity session. So I'll go back to Unity and I'll show you exactly how I've implemented these three sounds. For the wind, the ambient, which is a 2D sound, you can really attach it to anything. You could put it on the floor, you can attach it to the camera, you can attach it to a plank, but to make sense, there is actually a little wind effect in this, which I've lost. Here we go, wind zone. So if you come over here, you can see that there's a little particle effect for wind blowing up this way. I've just attached it to that so we know it's in the same place. To do this, it's as simple as adding a studio event emitter, which I'll show you again. So if I remove this, there will be no wind. But if you add a component, go to FMOD Studio again, you go to Studio Event Emitter, and it'll have play event, stop event. So you need to pick play event. For most 2D sounds, it'll probably be playing the whole time. So you have it when the object starts, and that object will always be in the level. So you click object start, so that means that when the wind is there, so will the sound of the wind. And then you just search through your events, and if you've built your master bank properly and FMOD's speaking to Unity properly, you should have these three different events. Well, however many events you have in your FMOD session. So I want to attach the wind to it, so you just double click, and now that will have the wind to it. So if I press play, and I go into the level as the player, you should hear wind. There you go. And if you notice that it's definitely a 2D sound, because as I move around the camera, the wind doesn't change. And I'll actually run over to the wind effect, which you can see here. The wind's blowing, there's dust along, or the smoke. It's not centered off the actual area that I've put it on. It's a 2D sound, so it plays indefinitely. Next, I'll run you through attaching 3D sounds to an object. So if you look in the content folder, there are a bunch of torch fires. I've gone through every single torch fire, apart from this one, for some reason, and I've added a event emitter, which is just our torch fire on object start, just like the wind. So if you come to the first one, which I didn't add, it's as simple as add a component, FMOD Studio, Studio Event Emitter, on start, and then torch fire. And now you can actually see when you get close to the 3D sound, sorry it's a little bit laggy, that you can see the range of the torch fire. So the big bubble is the furthest point away that the player will be able to hear it, and the closest one is obviously the minimum distance of that sound. So if you have the inner bubble all the way near the outside, then it'll be playing the same volume all the way to that sound, if that makes sense. So the closer you have it, the more kind of dynamic it is as you move away from it. But that makes sense for a lot of really loud objects because you don't want it to really attenuate as you get closer if you want it to be bigger, which you can control using these. So if you go to my torch fire and you click on the master, you can see the attenuation. You can see the minimum maximum distance. If I change any of these, so say I want to make the sound bigger, well, that gets really attenuation altogether, as you saw. If there's the same distance, then obviously there's going to be no attenuation. So if I go to 5, so it's a really, really big torch, and don't forget to build, because every single time you build, it also changes it within your master bank, and then Unity can read it. You can actually see it change. So now the inner bubble is bigger. So as I get close to that one, I'm actually not sure where that is. Where do I start? There. So if I turn around and I run to this one, you'll notice that the sound will behave differently once it loads. So with this as a normal torch, obviously there's a minimum distance, and then when I get further away, it gets quieter and then it fades. But this one will be louder from the start. And it will have a much shorter range of fading out. And that stopped for some reason. Anyway, let's double check that there's a loop on that. Yeah, it must have just glitched out. Anyway, so you can see that that's the way that you can change behaviors within FMOD, is these little sliders at the bottom. So that changes your sound. Anyway, the last one I wanted to show you was how to add a atmosphere atmospheric sound in a distance. So say you don't want to be a 2D sound, and you don't want to be playing around you all the time. Maybe when you get to a certain zone in the game, you want it to be able to be heard. So I've done this for my howls, but there was nothing I could really attach my howls to, so I made my own object, which you can see in the distance is this little box. So I've just kept it opaque so you can actually see it. And I've attached to this, as you can see, the big bubble, another event emitter, which is our howls. I've made it pretty big because you can only get to the wall in the game. So obviously you want to be able to hear it once you can get close to this wall. And it'll be playing from over here because it's a 3D noise. So if I load up the game and run over to the werewolf howls, you should be able to hear them. You can see the box in the distance, that's where the sound's going to be coming from. It's still a little bit quiet at the moment, but all you have to do is fool around with some settings and you can get it to sound exactly how you want it to sound. Obviously you can make that box see-through as well, so the sound just comes from nowhere and it adds a lot of atmosphere to your games. That's the really simple way that I wanted to show you guys how to put audio into your games. Obviously there's a lot more complicated things you can do with trigger boxes and such, which I'll actually do one for you now. So if I come over this way and near the main camera and I want to create an object, I'll show you how to do that. All you have to do is go to the bottom or just go anywhere, right click, and you want to create a 3D object. So you make a cube. You can move the cube wherever you like. So I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. Sorry, a little bit rusty. And I'm going to put the trigger in the ground over here. And make it a little bit bigger. And then, if you turn off the mesh render, so it's see-through, and you make sure that the collider stays on, and you make sure it's a trigger. Then you can attach a FMOD Studio event emitter. So I'll just put on a werewolf howl. And then you go play event on trigger, enter. And then when you walk into that box directly behind you, it should play. And that's how you can implement triggers within the game. And now obviously that's going to keep going because I've got the event emitter on a loop. But what you can do is you can change it so that when you trigger exit, it will stop when you leave. Hopefully. Make sure you check with the game programmer before you start adding triggers and such within their levels as well. So enter it, it should start howling, and then when you leave, it stops. Just like that. So it's a little bit jarring, but obviously there are certain uses for that within games. Anyway, that's the very basic ways of implementing audio within Unity, and I hope to make another one of these soon. Thanks for watching.